Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This morning, I was going to remember, try to follow the dates on these videos and the pictures. This morning, I was going to come out here and make a second video on church history, just really overview like we were doing. And then I thought I'm going to start. The next teaching we're going to do is the book of James in the New Testament. But then I wound up going to the coffee shop. I get there early, 7 o'clock. And the picture I posted earlier today of that little Volkswagen Beetle that said hippie machine. I don't talk a lot at all at the coffee shop. Today, when I met the kid, I was talking to him. I talked for 3 hours. It's 11:30 right now. He just graduated from A&M. And I was just talking about the classic cars. And had a Mustang, and then he wanted to keep going. He covered everything: physics, world history, Aristotle, David Hume, philosophy, existence of God, Einstein, relativity, everything for about 3 hours. And I said, "Man, I gotta go. What's your name?" He says, "Jacob." I pray. When I pray for a lot of my friends, prisoners and all, for some reason I kind of have a thing where I refer to that whole group in my prayer as Jacob. It's a long story, but it makes it easier. One of the kids that got sentenced to life is named Jacob, so that's a name I use when I pray. So I don't know, I might just cover some of the stuff we discussed. We covered a lot: politics, business, world situations. I guess some of the last things I was talking about was political philosophy, justification for war. Talked a lot about the involvement we have, things going on in the world. Some of the stuff on Einstein's theory of relativity and the 20th century breakthroughs in physics. I discussed some of that. And John Nash, the guy that Ron Howard made the movie about, A Beautiful Mind. He just died on the New Jersey Turnpike. I read it yesterday. He was in a taxi accident, and him and his wife were ejected from the vehicle, died. He taught at Princeton, Nash, made the movie about him. I'll just hit on some of it. I can't do the 3 hours. It's funny, some people don't hear me talk at all over there, but whoever was sitting out there heard about 3 hours of covering everything. As I talked to Jacob, talked about justifications. Where do we get? I shared with Jacob that we have a lot of criticisms against why people do violent actions. We live in a time where ISIS and things are happening. I didn't justify any killing. I said, but one of the things we do in the Western world, okay, in the Western mindset. I was talking John Locke the other day. We'll do a little more of that. But, and I mentioned him because his writings, his political theory really is the foundation of all Western democracies today, the writings of John Locke. But I said, I was telling Jacob, and he agreed, I think, with most of what I was saying. I said, we justify killing at times, but we find killing that others do reprehensible. I said, but all killing is reprehensible. All killing. We just had Memorial Day, and I certainly honor those who gave their lives in this country. But you hold to account the political leadership of countries who at times involve us in things that killing is not justified. Various reasons for war and things like that. Right at the end of our discussion, I talked a little bit about Stephen Hawking and different philosophers. I talked about Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens was a very famous atheist. He died a few years ago. The three famous ones in the last 10 years have been Richard Dawkins. I believe Dawkins is a physicist, but he's one of the famous atheists. Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens. And I read Hitchens, and I refuted him and some of the stuff. One of the points we were making, I was making, mixing in philosophy, physics, and all, many years, and I went all the way back to the beginnings of cosmology, and I explained or shared that right at the time of, right after the breakup, Alexander the Great, when he died, about the 4th century before Christ, is Alexander the Great's time, great conqueror of the Greek Empire. And I explained how his generals, the kingdom was divided amongst 4 of his generals and their families after them, and one of the generals was named Ptolemy, and Ptolemy took over Egypt. In that area, the Seleucids were in the area of Syria, where the Jewish people, in some of the history, intertestamental period, that's where they would be fighting against that group, because it's in that area of Syria, Palestine, that Middle East area. But the general who was in charge of Egypt, Ptolemy, through his line, there was developed the idea, the modern concept of cosmology and our understanding of the universe. Really, they had a very good understanding back then, before the time of Christ, the ancient Greek thinkers. And I said the view that was really predominant all the way up until the time of the scientific revolution, right around about the 1500s, 1600s, I said the Ptolemaic view of our solar system stood fairly strong. And it was an understanding of the solar system that was very much like what we have today. But during the scientific revolution, man of Galileo, sometimes the Copernican revolution, Copernicus, Kepler, through these men we understood that our solar system is now what we call heliocentric as opposed to geocentric. Simply meant with the great breakthrough that we saw with Galileo and the development, invention of the telescope, was that all of our solar system is revolving around the sun, heliocentric, sun-centric, not around the earth, geocentric. And that was the great breakthrough. It wasn't that everybody believed the earth was flat. But I was talking to Jacob and said, but the great breakthroughs of science that took place in the 20th century with Einstein and the Catholic priest who really was the great, if you will, discoverer more so of the Big Bang was Lamarck. I believe his name was Lamarck. He was a physicist, but he was a Catholic priest. And the Big Bang theory is accepted today, and it was backed up, and it showed during the time of the Einstein's revolution, if you will, in physics today. But it showed that everything, time, matter, space, and energy, had a beginning point. And when we talk about Big Bang cosmology, the Big Bang theory, we call that the point of singularity. And at that point, everything was at one point, but there was a beginning even to that little point. And I said, right before that point of all creation, what did you have? And Jacob, I think, agreed with most of what I was saying. But I explained to him, I said, by the law of logic, the only logical explanation was it had to be something that was metaphysical, non-physical. And that something that was non-physical has to have been the cause of everything that is physical. Now that's the law of cause and effect. I was discussing with one of the other kids, college kids, one day. He had some notes on the British philosopher David Hume. And when I mentioned Kant, John Locke, the other day, Hume was right around that period. And John Locke, I believe it was John Locke, he wrote a lot of works, but one of them was, I think it was Locke, either Locke or Kant, but it was called The Critique of Pure Reason. But it was a challenge to some of the things that David Hume said. But David Hume was a philosopher who said, we don't always know what cause and effect what the cause of a certain effect is. And David Hume used a few examples, but one was if somebody hits a pool ball with a cue stick, and that pool ball hits another one, goes into the pocket. David Hume said, it seems reasonable that the cause of the one pool ball going into the pocket was because somebody hit it with a pool stick. But Hume said, we don't know for sure. We don't know for sure. This is epistemology. How do we know things? That's the field, a branch of philosophy. Well, in the field of physics, this became a big thing. Both philosophy and physics, mathematicians and all, they were progressing. And in our day, I was talking to Jacob, and I said, science and physics got to a point where some physicists, some scientists argue for a purely naturalistic view of science, which sounds correct. And it basically means when you're doing science, physics is the study of everything physical, okay? Metaphysics is when the field of philosophy, thought, all of those things, morals, ethics, it's non-physical things that we deal with in metaphysics. I said, so anyway, some famous physicists and scientists who were atheists, there are some, Dawkins I just mentioned. The problem that arose in the 20th century was when we learned that all matter, space, time, and energy had a beginning point. Jacob, at the coffee shop, my 3-hour talk with Jacob, world history, everything. Jacob said himself, he said, you know, some scientists at that time who were atheists, they didn't want to believe in the Big Bang. I said, you're right. I said, the smartest physicists and atheists at that time did say, if we accept the Big Bang theory, that there was a beginning point to everything, then we lose the argument to the believing scientist, whether he be deist, believing in some being, Christian, Muslim. The atheistic scientists said, if the Big Bang theory is true, and we accept Big Bang cosmology, then the Christian, the deist, those who believe in God, they win this hands down. And why did they say that? Why did the atheistic scientists say that? Because we didn't always know for sure that there was an actual beginning point to everything. And if there was, logically, scientifically, there must have been a cause for that effect. Because science, not religion, not the Bible, science shows us that you cannot have an effect without a cause. And some of you might not understand. If I had a room and I could say it's hermetically sealed, there's nothing in that room. Now, actually, in the field of physics, if you have the room, there's something, okay? Scientifically, any space that's in existence, there's stuff there, okay? Scientifically, that's so. But for this little example, if you had a room that there was nothing in the room, and I shut the door, and outside was me, Christian, and maybe an atheist. And then I had another room, and you open the door to that room, and in that room was this ecosystem, you know, or just say this carnival, make it easier. There's a carnival going on, a circus, animals, people eating popcorn and all this. And in those two rooms, I said to my atheist friend, I said, this door that opens up with all these things in it, people and everything, trees or whatever, I said, I believe that something caused everything to be in that room. It just couldn't have happened. The room couldn't have started empty and then have all this in it. Now, the atheistic scientist who actually denies anything before the point of singularity, before the point of the Big Bang. The scientist who says there was nothing. Now, even the atheists don't say that, the smart ones, because they know that's not true. But for this example, if the atheistic scientist said to me, my explanation to you, John, for everything in this room going on, all this life and everything, plants and animals, and my explanation is nothing caused that. But over a period of time, you keep that door shut over millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of years, just give it enough time, and that room, all on its own, with nothing in there, will develop all of these things. The universe, the cosmos, everything will just come from nothing. That belief, which some hold to, is not scientific at all. That belief is impossible. According to science, it's impossible for something to come from nothing. Now you go to the room with nothing in it, and we open that door, and I say, I'm going to close this door, and you're telling me that everything came from nothing. And if the atheistic friend says, just leave that door closed long enough, just give it enough time, over time, he says, everything will be in that room. In a million, billion, zillion years, I don't care how many. If there was nothing in that room and you open that door, there'd be nothing. And I'm not telling you that from religion, the Bible. I'm telling you that from science. And this is the misunderstanding people have. When we learned in the 20th century that there was a time where there was nothing except a non-material being, has to be. You say, well, John, I remember one time Christopher Hitchens, in one of the debates before he passed away, he was asked, they were having a debate with a Christian. The Christian asked him this question. He said, what did you have before the Big Bang? Before the point of singularity? And Hitchens didn't say nothing because he was smart. He was an intellectual. He was an atheist. He said, we just don't know. He knew how to answer. He said, there's no reason for us to have an answer for that. And then he appealed to the audience. It was in front of a live audience. And he said to them, right, we don't need an answer. And the audience, it was, I think, in a college campus. The audience didn't agree with Hitchens. And another part of the debate, I don't know if it was that one or another one, I watched a few by Hitchens years ago. But he also said something that I thought was funny once, interesting. He said, and even if Jesus was a person and he did rise from the dead, he said that still doesn't mean that everything he said was true. Why did he actually admit the possibility that Jesus was an historical person who rose from the dead? Look, in the field of arguing for the existence of God, physics, apologetics, history, you can argue the historical record. Now, I'm not saying it's real strong, but you can argue outside of the Bible that Jesus was a historical figure who did indeed rise from the dead. There's ways for me to explain that to you. I can't do it all right now. But Hitchens must have been familiar with that argument, Christopher Hitchens, the atheist, because he didn't say, oh, it's a fairy tale. He said, even if it's true that he rose, he must have read some of those arguments for the historical reality that Christ rose from the dead. And instead of arguing that it's all fake, he was smart enough to know. Instead, he said, well, even if he rose from the dead, it doesn't mean everything he said was true. I found that interesting. In my talks with Jacob, today I was going to do church history, but I talked philosophy with him. I talked Stephen Hawking. I said, the atheistic scientists, the reason, I said a lot of scientists, over time, I'm going to do a little bit of Rene Descartes and the philosophies. I'm going to do a little bit of, and the philosophers all were dealing with these issues, okay? But over time, some of the scientists that were truly atheists, they knew that they had a problem. They knew that this was a problem. Scientifically, what I just explained to you. One person's explanation for everything is showing up in an empty room. One person's explanation, the Christian view, is something caused it. That's logical. That's scientific. Something caused it. The other atheistic explanation was nothing caused it. Scientifically impossible. Nothing caused it. I might end with the difference between a metaphysical argument and a purely physical argument. As time developed in philosophy and scientific revolution and all of these fields, the smart atheists knew this was a problem. So some said, we are not going to argue with the Christian scientist or the scientist who believes in a supreme being. We're just going to say to that person, to that scientist, well, we have no answer for what you had before the Big Bang. But we are now going to relegate that question to metaphysics, meaning we're just going to start saying, if you can't physically have something to show us that we can detect physically, we're going to say that's no longer science. Okay? We're going to say that's a metaphysical argument outside of the realm of physics, and that's it. We're going to have no answer for it anymore if it's not actually, this is called a naturalistic view of physics or science. All scientists do not hold this view, and all scientists have not held this view throughout the history of the understanding of science. Now, this came up with me talking to Jacob. But they had a problem over time. And the more we learned about the natural universe, the more we learned, as time advanced, the atheistic scientists ran into problems and said, there's things called the cosmological constant. These are certain numbers and formulas and exact measurements of things that have to be exact in order for there to be life on our planet, for the solar system to function. All of these things, they learned over time through science. And the more time went on, there's just no explanation. How are these gases and all of these measurements, the distance, how did it all happen? And the example I gave to my friend at the coffee shop was, if I gave you a quarter, Jacob, and he wasn't disagreeing with me, he believed, I think, along with me. I said, but if I gave you a quarter and I told you, flip that quarter 100 times until it lands on heads every single time. Now, it might happen. It'll take a long time, and the odds on it happening are not good. This is the example. As time progressed in the field of science, the more we found out about the intricacies, the exact balance, the delicate balance of all these things, the odds of all these things happening by chance. Now understand, the odds of everything coming from nothing is zero. That's impossible. Don't give in to that. Some say, well, the odds of everything coming from nothing are infinitesimal. No, zero. Scientifically impossible for anything to come from nothing. Don't ever forget that. Some Christian apologists make that mistake. But in this other area of how it's all working, the intricacy of it, the odds kept getting worse because we kept finding out, it's all this other stuff we're finding out. And it couldn't have just happened. The example of the quarter, it would be asking Jacob, let it hit heads every time in a row, not just for 100 times, but for 1,000,000 times. The odds got worse for the atheist. So what did eventually they do? They came up with other explanations, which are not science. One of them was called the multiverse, and I'm going to make it short. They realized the odds were so hard that if they simply said there were many untold number of other universes, all of a sudden the odds of it may be happening, not everything coming from nothing. There are no odds on that, impossible. But all of the order of it all working together and all of that, if you have untold number of universes, the odds maybe are a little better. That's why the multiverse theory came up. Now I want you to follow. Okay, you got to think when I teach it this way. Follow me. So it would be like me telling Jacob, well, instead of just you flipping the quarter for the rest of your life, seeing if it hits heads every time, I'm going to hire 1,000,000 Jacobs all over the coffee shops and all over the world, and have all of you start flipping the quarter. The odds just got a little better. The chances of it all happening still not good. That's what happened with the multiverse theory. Now, John, what's the problem? It's a theory. It's the same theory that the Christian or the deist is saying. He's postulating a non-physical cause, something non-detectable by physical science, as the source of all things. And if the naturalistic is going to reign again, if the naturalistic scientist is saying we cannot have anything unless it's actually touched and tasted, then the multiverse is in that category, because we do not have any evidence for it physically at all. And in our day, it's starting to fall by the wayside, okay? I just shared a little bit. This is an argument for the existence of God that I just gave you. And it's not a religious argument. It's from science and from the law of logic. That's where cause and effect comes from, as well as a scientific method. So this is part of our conversation. And it was good. I like doing it. I was going to do church history today, a little bit, and then I was going to start the book of James. I want you to follow along. We're going to do a little more on philosophy. I'm going to mix some of those things in. We're going to spend some time in James. I was going to do the book of Galatians, but Galatians is a shorter version of the same arguments the Apostle Paul made in the book of Romans. So I didn't want to, I didn't feel I should go right into Galatians at this point. So we're going to do James. I want to bless you guys. My schedule is off. I usually do some other things. I came downtown because I'm going to get with Pops, the old man Pops. So I just came right over here, figured I'd make a quick video. But the Christian view, from the example, everything in that room was caused by something. The atheistic view is everything in that room came from nowhere. Look, only one of those views is sane, okay? Don't let anybody ever tell you that the Christian belief or the belief in God is a nonsensical belief, because modern science has advanced. If your view is everything came from nothing, that's not knowledge. That's not science. But my view is everything came from something. That's knowledge. That's science. It would take a whole other series of things to argue for the historical reality of Christianity, which can be done, to argue why the Christian faith, we believe, is the legitimate faith. All of those things, over time, we'll do a little bit of that at a time, okay? I just gave you a little flavor. It would be impossible. I covered a lot with Jacob. Talked about a lot of philosophy, ethics, reasons why we do certain things. I'll mention Hawking. I don't know if I said it. Stephen Hawking knows, many of the atheistic scientists know that this is a dilemma. And Hawking wrote a book a few years ago. And in essence, he said gravity created itself, which cannot be. One of the laws of logic is a thing cannot exist, and also not exist at the same time and in the same relationship. That's part of science. And why did he do it if he knew he was wrong? scientists told him, "Oh, he's got it wrong," because he couldn't come up with an answer. Why do we reject God? Is there enough arguments to make somebody accept God? Jesus said the light came into the world, and men, the Gospel of John, men loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. They did not want to come to the light, lest their deeds would be exposed. In the end, I'll tell you, I've been studying and reading for many years. The Christian view is the intellectual view. I'll tell you that. But the intellectual argument cannot really convert a person, because there's stuff that they don't want to let go of. And even if it's the pride of their intellect, there's stuff that people don't want to let go of. It's always a matter of repentance. I'm going to see Pops in a few minutes. I think Pops went to the AA meeting. I'm going to go pick him up, and then I'm going to go fellowship. Pops got diagnosed with liver cancer 2 weeks ago. I mentioned I had some physical things. I told people I'm treating these things. I wasn't talking about the depression. That was there's physical things I treat with vitamins, not the, what do you call it, the bipolar, all these things, humanity. But I told Pops, I said, because when he was worried about certain symptoms he had, I said, Pops, I'm going to tell you some things. I said this, you know, a few things. I said, I tell you that to let you know, we're all going to die. And I didn't want to depress him, but I let him know, I don't know how much anybody has. But Pops was a little shaky about having the liver cancer. A lot of people like us that drank for many years, others that did drugs, we did a lot of damage. And you can tell at times that damage. But in the kingdom of God, we have hope. There's hope, there's resurrection. God can heal, does heal. I believe in all that. So I want to end. I'm going to go see Pops. I'm going to go and hang out with some of the guys. I went to get Pops yesterday, and he wasn't home. So I went to the other house and hung out with Bear and the guys. Pops and Bear live like 2 blocks from each other, 3 blocks. And they both got Indian heritage and Christian beliefs. And they've never met each other. I said, you know, Pops, and I told Bear, you know, Bear, I'm coming over visiting you guys, doing outreach in this part of town for a few years. I said, you live in walking distance. And Pops tells me, I like Bear and Joe. And I might do some meetings over where you see me with the little baby goats. That's where Bear lives. But yesterday, Pops wasn't home, but he called me. I finally called back. I don't answer a lot. He went to the hospital. And I asked him, what was wrong, Pops? And he had someone take him to ER. It wasn't nothing with liver cancer or nothing. But he was feeling a little weak, and he might have been a little low on blood sugar or something. But he normally never would have went. But he's afraid now, which is a natural thing. And that's probably why he went. So I'm doing like a pastor thing with Pops. I'm helping him out. And then when I called him back last night, because I had about 3 missed calls, I went to get him, but I guess later he got back, so I left a note. And I called him. I said, I'm going to call him. He was just so happy, like a pastor type thing. Oh, thank you for calling, John. And so he's a little shaky. Life is frail. That's why we do this. That's a hope, okay? I'm down by the water. 3 hours at Coffee Waves. Whoever was, oh, there's the little ferry. Whoever was sitting at Coffee Waves, they haven't heard me talk today. They probably said, I didn't even know that guy ever spoke, had a tongue. All right, look at the ferry. One day I'm going to ride the ferry and make a video on the ferry. God bless everybody.